How we doing? My name is GIanni Frangella. I am the creator of Outlier Sports. Um, and if you don't know what that is, I don't blame you. It's brand new. This is day three. This is a sports media page that I started. Um, a little bit about me. I'm a 22-year-old college student. I go to Southern University, and I'm hoping to graduate next fall. I'm sorry, next spring. And I'm pursuing a degree in mass communications. I want to go into sports media. And I just felt like this would be a fun thing to do and to see where it goes, test my skills out, both creating, you know, the designs for posts and but also creating content, writing articles, and making videos, podcasts, etc. And I feel like it's a good way for me to hone my skills. With that being said, welcome to Outlier Sports, and this is the very first podcast of the manager with me, Gianni Frangella. Um, Today, we're going to be talking about obviously last night the Indiana Pacers did their thing, hit the big one, 125 to 108 over the New York Knicks in Game 6, securing their spot in the NBA Finals for the first time since Y2K. This was a really entertaining series, and not only was it entertaining in the vacuum of, I think it was just really good by itself. Um, the fact that it was so much more entertaining, in my opinion, than the Western Conference Finals, it was needed for NBA fans and for basketball fans. After the first two rounds, kind of just got us used to these classics. Um, we we could not go back to blowouts and something that wasn't entertaining, especially when I feel like the last 2 years before this, that same thing pretty much happened, where the first two rounds were very entertaining. And once you got to the conference finals, teams, it was just lopsided. And this year, I feel like we got a happy medium. The Thunder were a lot better than Minnesota, but the Pacers and the Knicks was a very entertaining series, and obviously it wasn't a pushover or anything boring to watch. Good stuff for sure. Now we're going to get into the series review, take it all over from the top. And you go back to game one, which I truly think will just haunt New York forever. I mean, they had it in their hands. I think they were up 14 with around 2.5 minutes left. I know they were up 9 with 52 seconds left. You're on the verge of getting this huge game one win. Everybody's going crazy in the Garden. The fans are feeling it. New York's feeling it. Everybody's ready to, party after this. And you blow this game in just unreal fashion. I mean, one of the most truly an unprecedented choke, um, given the amount of time and just the way it happened. And a loss like that is such a huge momentum swing in the other team's favor. Not to mention, this team eliminated you in a game seven last year. Um, so they already kind of have a mental edge over you. And losing that game that you were confidently about to win up until the last second was just such a huge swing of momentum. And you can argue that, maybe they still don't win the series if they win that game one. Maybe, that's the only other game they win and it's 3-3 and we're going back to New York for game seven. Maybe the Pacers win. Who knows? But ultimately, I will say, I think that the way they lost that game uh, just hung such a dark cloud over them that it kind of hung over them the rest of the series and especially game two. Um, it just took the wind beneath their sails. So that game one's going to haunt New York for a long time, especially if they failed to make it back there next year. Um, and game two, I felt like was a game that could have been won still, but I think Thibodeau really kind of let this one get away from him by playing in the fourth quarter of that game. He played Mitchell Robinson in favor of Karl Anthony Towns from the 9-minute mark left in the fourth quarter to 2 minutes and 25 seconds. And I think he was keeping him in there for defensive purposes. That was the motivation because Siakam was just torching them. But it wasn't working out well enough that you had to keep him in the game. And also, it, he was a liability because Indiana started intentionally fouling him. And I mean, he cannot make free throws. He just cannot. So, truthfully, I think that was just a huge mistake, and Thibodeau completely gave that game away. So you give one game away because of coaching. I mean, you could definitely say game one was obviously a coaching issue as well, but that's a collapse on everybody's. That the blame goes all around when you lose a game like they did in game one. But game two, they very much could have had, I think, had Thibodeau gone a different direction with this game. So you give two games up right there, and you lose in six. You think in theory we could have won in six, but doesn't always work that line of thinking is very flawed. But losing those two games was really bad. And then you have a remarkable game three win, down 20, and you come back and steal it in Indiana. Um, a win that really feels like, even though they're still down, that could have been their momentum swing. I remember saying, to one of my friends when that happened, I was like, this is their game one. This is Indiana's game one, where if they go on to lose this series, this is going to be the game that will haunt them forever. Obviously, they didn't. They won, and New York is the team that's going to have the nightmares. But that was such a huge win for them, and they just couldn't ride enough of the momentum of that, and they lost in game four. And game four, Halliburton goes nuts, has basically the perfect triple double. I think it was 32, 15, and 10, and no turnovers. I'm pretty sure, just unreal. But he has this monstrous game, and then game five, you respond emphatically, and it was a thing of where the wins they had were huge wins. Dominant win in game five, huge comeback win in game three, but they could not ride any of the momentum that came from the success in those games. So they lose the series in six. Ultimately, Indiana was just the better team. I mean, they've been so impressive these playoffs. It's unreal. Clutch moments. They can come back on you in a second. And Halliburton's just really coming into his own. Obviously, Siakam's been playing incredible as well. But I think Halliburton in some of these games is unlocking, part of the next tier that I think he can hit as a player, especially as a scorer. But with him and an experienced guy like Siakam, and it's all working together, and just their team, their depth, their unity as a squad, it's really so much fun to watch. But they get it done, and so you got to ask now, what is Indiana? I'm sorry, what is New York gonna do from here? You get to the conference finals, you did better than you did last year. You lose to the same team though, ultimately, and a lot of people, through Knicks fans online and just what people have been saying, are lobbying for Thibodeau to be fired, given this series. And I don't think it's outrageous. I mean, I just said, I mean, I really think he gave away game two and definitely made some huge mistakes. And his lack of, experimentation with the lineup throughout the year kind of put them in the box for the series against a team that was a lot deeper than them. I mean, and that shows when you consider that the Pacers had 7 guys who averaged 9 points per game, while New York only had 4. And that is such a huge factor when you consider the type of team Indiana is. They're a momentum-based team, in my opinion. That's kind of how I refer to them. And what I mean by that is that when they gain momentum, that's how they become unstoppable. That's how they win games, is by having these huge swings by, a bench guy or Nemhard or Neesmith or someone who's not Halliburton or Siakam. It's someone who comes in the game and just makes a huge difference, provides a huge swing, and that lays the foundation for how they win the game because they ride that momentum. They are a momentum-based team, and when you have three extra guys giving you 9 points per game, I know it doesn't sound crazy, but um, that's I really feel like it makes a big difference because it's when how you have those 9 points and when you have those 9 points, and it can be a moment and a turning point in a game. And so when you have three more guys giving you a chance at turning points, it poses a challenge for New York. And New York finished the series with 18 more total turnovers. That was one note I had as well, and that's three extra per game against a team that, again, thrives on momentum, and you're giving them three extra possessions where they're fast paced and they're efficient offense. Um, and especially at home, you get a turnover and a score, and the crowd is going nuts. So that was a huge flaw for them, and I think it played a role in how they lost the series. But for New York now, you get to the same spot. I don't really know where you go from here because you have a good team, and I don't think it's like a issue of you need to go get another star player. I've seen a lot of people say they should trade for Cat too, and I disagree with that. I know he was disengaged on defense this series, and that cost them. But you sometimes you have to accept the leap that you take and not panic and do something drastic. Um, and what I mean by that is New York shouldn't, make a huge trade with anyone involving, obviously not going to trade Bronson, but you shouldn't do anything involving Anunoby, Mikal Bridges, or Karl Anthony Towns because that's your core, in my opinion. I think that's what got you here, and you shouldn't mess with that because yeah, maybe you can make it better, but you could make it worse, and you could lose, your chance of contending again. Um, and I think that obviously he has to be better. Karl Anthony Towns has to be better for them to get to the finals. That's a fact. However, this team, I'm a Nuggets fan, if you can't tell by my Colorado flag and the Jokic jersey behind me, but I really saw the same issue that the Nuggets ran into with the Knicks in the series is they are not deep enough. And when especially with a coach like Thibodeau, you know, it's not even that they don't have good players on their team, but their philosophy is so we need to win this game and we have to do that by running the starters and we're not going to sacrifice a single game if it, just to develop some of these players or get them have them be used right within our system. And the Nuggets ran into that same issue, and that's I mean ultimately cost Malone his job, and I do think that that could cost Thibodeau his job as well. Um, and there's Mike Malone is a coach, another coaching option out there. So maybe they go in that direction. Maybe they fire Thibodeau. I don't think it's the worst idea, and especially because it's not like you can look at Thibodeau's track record and say that he will, he has potential to get over the hump. It's really to a point now where this is what you are. Like you can make a team really good, but you cannot get them over the hump. We know this about you. And until proven otherwise, you know, we can't trust you. I do think there's maybe the argument to make that, Boston's probably not going to be contending next year. Milwaukee's not going to be contending next year. And I would say that confidently, even regardless of what happens with Giannis. Um, Dame's going to be out, and I would already say they're at a disadvantage, even if he was playing. So Boston and Milwaukee's gone. Indiana's going to be there again next year, barring something drastic in this final series. Um, the East is wide open, and I mean maybe Philadelphia, but there's so many question marks there. If I'm the Knicks, I mean I would very seriously consider just adding a guy or two to this roster and expanding your rotation a little bit so maybe you're not relying all on your starters to be good all the time. Um, but I think maybe you just add one. I would like seriously be considering just adding one guy and running it back for this next season and seeing what happens after that. Because the East is wide open, and it's like, well, you may have not gotten it done this year, but if you make some slight improvements with next year, it's probably going to be easy sailing back to where you got to at conference finals. Cleveland's going to be around. I almost completely forgot about the Cavs. Cleveland's going to be there as well, but still less teams to worry about than you had to, and it might just make getting back to the conference finals that much easier, and maybe that could be the difference enough in itself to get to the finals. But I do think obviously you got to consider moving on to a different coach, especially considering there's other good coaches out there. Mike Brown's another available coach out there. Um, so maybe you fire Tibbs. I don't really think you should trade Karl Anthony Towns, but that's a potential option as well. Frankly, I would explore seeing what you can get for Josh Hart. I mean, $20 million. I know he's not meant to be a scorer. Like he plays defense, he's an energy guy, rebounds, but like $20 million a year to average 8 points per game in the conference finals, and that's not like a necessarily like huge slump of a series for you. Like MPJ and against Oklahoma City, don't get me wrong, was horrible. But he also, I mean, he was facing an injury, but also like it was a downgrade from what you expect from him. Josh Hart, that's not like tremendously worse than what you do expect from him. And so I don't know. I think they have too much invested, not even money wise, but just in terms of how like what he means to this team for him to not give you more than that. I would explore seeing what you can get for him, and maybe anyone else on the team. But you are also, I think you're losing guys like Shamit, Payne, Achua, and Wright. They all become free agents, and I do think Shamit and maybe could have been utilized better on this team, but now he's gone unless they bring him back. Campaign was an up and down experience to say the least, but I had some good moments for them, but he's gone. Um, McCall will now have 1 year left on his deal. Maybe you consider a trade with him if you're gonna get, if he's only gonna be there 1 more year. However, you just traded 5 first-round picks for him, so I think it would not be the best idea to do that. So he's got 1 year left on his deal. It probably means he gets an extension, which is going to put you in a tighter situation for your caps going forward. But I think the Knicks got to make some big decisions this offseason. And not just for this year, but for their future as well. So we'll see what they do. They're also going to be spending $11 million more next year, which sounds bad, but I mean that alone could be, all of, or if not, close to what the cap rise is, the salary cap rise in money for this next year. So that's not super detrimental. Just wanted to note that. But yeah, I don't know where New York goes from there, but big off season. And another thing I wanted to talk about was Pascal Siakam was named the Eastern Conference Finals MVP. Kind of questionable if you ask me. I think it should have been, personally, I think it should have been Tyrese Halliburton. So I pulled up both their stats. I want to look at it. Halliburton averaged 21 points per game, 6 rebounds per game, 10.5 assists per game, 2.5 steals per game on 45, 33, 82 shooting splits. As opposed to Siakam, who had 24.8 points per game, 5 rebounds per game, 3.5 assists per game, 1.3 steals per game on 52, 50, 67 shooting splits. So Siakam had, around 4 more points more than him per game, and shot better from the field and from three. But in every other aspect, Halliburton was better than him. And 10.5 assists and 2.5 steals is huge. To go with 21 points and the fact that he's getting more rebounds, even though Siakam's your power forward, I really don't know. I think I can say I would say the argument probably came from the idea that it just felt like Siakam, the good games that he was having, the big moments that he was having, maybe felt greater and felt more important. And I can get that argument. I did when he was playing well, it was tremendous and played such a role in the way the game played out. But I really just think that Halliburton should have got it there. And I actually have this little theory on the conference finals MVP. I think it was kind of designed to be a how do I put this? I think it was kind of designed to broaden the the legacies of the league a little bit and to give a chance to give a chance to more number two guys, the guys who are not the number one guy, not the face of the franchise, to win an MVP. Like if it's a toss up between the number one and the number two guy, I think, or if it's just kind of close, but maybe even the number one guy is a little bit better, I think they're going to give it to the number two because they want to broaden the legacies. Um, you know, it's an entertainment thing. You're getting more people accolades that heighten their legacies. It's a little by little ploy to make people more excited about the game. More people have bigger legacies. More players are celebrated. More people are celebrating. More players. It just creates more interest. It's like little by little ploy to make things a little bit more entertaining. And an example of this that's not just this year is last season. Um, I don't have their stats pulled up right next to me, but on paper, Tatum definitely had better stats than Jaylen Brown did. I mean, no question. And Jaylen Brown got it. And I think maybe their goal was, we'll give this one to Jaylen Brown and then we'll give the finals MVP, the one that we typically give to the big guy, the face of the franchise, Tatum. And then Jaylen Brown just actually outplayed him in the finals. But I mean, I don't know. That's just my harebrained theory. There's probably no merit to that at all. Um, but I thought it was interesting that Halliburton didn't get conference finals MVP. That brings us to the 2025 NBA Finals. Best defense versus best offense. It's not really true. Pacers were the ninth best offensive rating in the regular season and second in the playoffs to only Cleveland. So technically best offense if you want to put it that way. But but I'm really excited for this series, and I just seen a lot of people saying it's going to be boring, it's going to be bad hoops. I do think there's a slight potential to some bad hoops, but ultimately I am excited for the series. I think you have two really entertaining teams, and obviously OKC's got the best defense, but their offense is really entertaining as well. I'm a Nuggets fan, and I'll just say it because I do think I want to be honest on this outlier sports. One thing we value is honesty. I'm going to be rooting for the Pacers. Just a little bit of bitterness from that Thunder series. And I can see what people say is like, there are times where they're so physical that it feels like maybe they're getting away with some calls they shouldn't be getting. But ultimately, it is what it is. You got to play the game. And I don't think for 1 second that the referees caused the Nuggets to lose that series. They blew both of those, games 4 and 5. That was on their own merit, and then they got blown out in their other two losses. So you can't put the refs on that. That was on their own merit. And if the Thunder win, it's going to be on their own merit. Um, so I can see where people say when they say that it might be some bad hoops if it becomes a foul fest, free throw fest, or if it's a little inconsistent, like feels like it maybe has been at times in the playoffs. But ultimately, I'm really excited because these two teams play with pace, 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 pace. They're two just so, fast-paced offenses. They're always trying to move it fast up the court, and that's so entertaining from a fan perspective. And it's been really successful for them. It's not just a coincidence that they're the two, you know, fastest paced teams, and they ended up in the finals. It was an integral part of their success, and they were second and third among in pace among teams in the playoffs, behind only Memphis, who only played 4 games. Um, so the pace is going to be a very fun thing to watch. But I think what's going to be the difference maker in this series is who can slow the other team down. And it's obviously, I think it's a lot more likely that OKC does that considering you have the best defense. Dort is a menace, Caruso is a menace. And if they can slow things down for Indiana, it's going to cause problems for them. But also, the Pacers have such an efficient offense. And Halliburton, he's not doesn't turn the ball over. And that's how OKC is. It's not only like one thing they've been good at is how they've thrived. It's how they've won these games in these playoffs and they've dominated these teams is by forcing just a million turnovers. So it'll be interesting to see. Is Indiana going to be immune to that? Are they going to have trouble with it and adjust, or are they going to completely succumb to OKC's defense? We'll see. It's going to be very entertaining to watch. Very good stuff. Good stuff. Another factor of the series is going to be the other guys. What I mean by the other guys, the way I define the other guys is each team has 2 to 4 players that are the central core, you know, maybe not stars, but like the core people of the team. For OKC, I think it's Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Jalen Williams, Chet Holmgren. That's who I think it is. Everyone else is another guy. For Indiana, I say it's Halliburton and Siakam. You can make the argument maybe it's someone else. I don't really think so. I consider everybody else to be another guy. And it's subjective for each team. And so in this series, let's look at the other guys for both teams. Indiana's got Nesmith, Nembhard, Obi Toppin, Ben Mathurin, and TJ McConnell. OKC's got Lou Dort, Isaiah Hartenstein, Alex Caruso, Kassan Wallace, Isaiah Joe, and Aaron Wiggins. I would give the other guys advantage to OKC, if I'm going to be honest. I think their Caruso plays such a huge role. Hartenstein's got experience as well. I trust them more. However, the other guys for Indiana definitely has a scoring advantage with Nesmith and Nembhard. And I think how those two guys play is actually going to be huge because I think if Indiana is going to win the series, they're going to need a Nesmith game or a Nembhard game where one of them kind of does what Nesmith did in game one and not and I don't mean exactly like hitting a prolific amount of threes in that span of time, but just having a moment that wins you a game or a really good game that you know plays a huge role in the series. So it swings momentum when you have a guy that's not Halliburton or not Siakam wins you a game. And I do think Indiana's going to need one, if not two of those from one of those other guys to win the series. You look at your starting matchups. We got Miles Turner versus Isaiah Hartenstein, Pascal Siakam versus Chet. Although I do think we'll take from Coach GIanni Frangella. I would definitely experiment with putting Miles Turner on Chet for defense just because of the length. I know that it's like center, power forward, but it's really it's positionless basketball. You know, I would put Turner on Chet just personally because I think it makes more sense. Shot blocker on the one who's a better scorer, the one who's better around the rim and who's got more length. And the more I say it, the more I feel like I'm dumb for even mentioning it. It's probably just going to happen anyway. But who knows? Who knows? Turner versus Hartenstein, Siakam versus Chet, Nesmith versus Williams. This one's going to be interesting to me because Jalen Williams, I think, is obviously definitely the better player, but Nesmith has had some huge moments in these playoffs, and Jalen Williams kind of had some stinkers in these playoffs. So I think you'll probably have one game where, at least one or two games where Williams definitely dominates the matchup and takes over. But I honestly think, regardless of who wins by the end of the series, it's going to be relatively even scale in terms of the performance wise. And I mean, it's likely that Jalen Williams ends up playing better. or maybe noticeably better, but I do think it's going to be closer than you'd imagine, given that Williams is an all-star and Neesmith is kind of a role guy. Then you got Andrew Nemhard versus Dort. Dort's probably going to be guarding, other people at times, but I think it'll be interesting because Dort is so much bigger than Nemhard, and I'm curious as I feel like this might be a rough series for Nemhard if he's going to have Dort on him a lot because it's not just a guy, a really good all NBA first team defender. It's a guy who is just built like a linebacker. He's a brute, and Nemhard is small. Like it's not just that he's not big. He's small. He's skinny, and so I think that's going to be rough for him. But we'll see. Maybe he proves me wrong, and maybe he can get Dort off him for some matchups. And then we have what's really the selling point of this finals, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander versus Tyrese Halliburton. Now, uh, what's incredible about this, and I actually posted a piece about this already on all the pages, is that this all traces back to Paul George in 2017. And if I'm sure that sounds incredibly confusing right now if we're talking about the 2025 NBA Finals, but it really does because Halliburton and SGA both ended up on these teams because of Paul George. In 2017, the Pacers traded Paul George to Oklahoma City in exchange for Domantas Sabonis and Victor Oladipo. And ultimately, all those players are gone. But it's not about the players that they got, it's how they used them. And 2 years later, in 2019, Paul George is traded from Oklahoma City to the Clippers for a rookie player, going into his second year now because the season was over, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Danilo Gallinari, and 5 first-round picks. And I believe it was 22, 24, 26 first by the Clippers and 23, 25 swaps. And among those picks, 2022 was Jalen Williams. So they're two best players on their team they get out of this trade from 2017. Then you go to the other side. They got Sabonis and Oladipo. Oladipo was a great piece, obviously, fortunately succumbed to injuries. And where the butterfly effect of where he went after that is actually pretty big too, but it's not relevant to this final, so I won't get into it. But then you look at Sabonis. Sabonis turns himself into a good player, becomes an all-star. Then they use Sabonis to trade for Halliburton. It's nuts how it traces back to this. Has there ever really been a bigger win-win trade in history where two teams make a trade and it directly results in both of them making the finals 8 years later? Who knows? I guess the decider on who won the trade all in all is going to be who wins this finals. But that's remarkable that we ended up here from 2017. But this matchup's going to be interesting. Hallie, I think he's going to have to up his scoring a little bit to win this series for the Pacers because SGA, I mean, the Pacers are not defensively dominant. And I don't see SGA having a problem in this series with their defense. So I think he's going to bring it. I think he's going to bring it. So you're going to need Halliburton to bring it more than he did in this past series scoring wise. 21, 10, and 6 is phenomenal. Don't get me wrong. But I truthfully think with how good of OKC is, for them to win this series, he's going to have to maintain his passing and his assists while also advancing his scoring. And that's a tough thing to do. It's a tall task, but I truly think it's what has to be done to beat this great Oklahoma City team. You're talking about one of only 4 teams in history that has won 80 games before the finals. And that's the 73-9 Warriors, 96-97 Bulls and 95-96 Bulls. You're going up against a historical team, so you're gonna have to do some things that are tall tasks. My prediction overall, I think the Thunder take it in 6. Unfortunately, I do, and I want the Pacers to win, but it's just their time, man. I mean, they're an unbelievable team. They're such a well put together squad by Sam Presti through the drafts, and then the real additions. The real thing that sealed it home was the additions of Caruso and Hartenstein, 100%. Just a flawless offseason after getting to the second round last year. And then, another great season from SGA. Jalen Williams makes an all-star team. It's their time. And it might be their time for a long time. Who knows? But this year, I just think it's their time. So I have them winning in 6. I think they are going to force those turnovers that they do every time. And I think that's going to really throw Indiana for a loop because they haven't had those, real issues like that in these playoffs. I think Caruso is going to get in the game and he's going to frustrate Halliburton and Nembhard. On top of Nembhard, maybe having to go up against Dort. They're smaller guys, and I think that physicality by Caruso and Dort, especially if it's allowed at the level that's been allowed, it's been kind of crazy. But if it keeps being allowed at this level, I think the physicality is going to get to Indiana, and they're going to ultimately lose. I think SGA is going to have a phenomenal series. I got him going for at least 33 points per game in this series, getting Finals MVP, obviously. So that's my take on the Finals and New York winning last night. This is kind of just a very brief pod, and I was gonna do this with my AirPods, but I kind of was just doing this as a test run. Got it going, felt good with it. So we're definitely gonna have improvements down the line, and as I go on. But this is the first podcast of the manager with GIanni Frangella on Outlier Sports. Thank you for listening or watching, and we'll do one next week for sure. And I cannot wait for these NBA Finals. NHL Stanley Cup is coming up as well. I'm going to be talking about that. But today we're just covering basketball. Thanks for listening and watching again. Please follow all the social medias for Outlier Sports. On Instagram and Twitter is outlier.sports. And then, on Instagram and TikTok, outlier.sports. And then on Twitter or X, it is outliersports_. Please go and follow, support on theirs, and have a great rest of your day.